picture of New York City at 7:33 in the morning. Welcome back to Morning Joe. Joining us here in studio in New York, former CIA Director John Brennan. He's Senior National Security and Intelligence Analyst for NBC News. Mr. Director, always good to see you.
Good morning, Willie.
Tell me your reaction, first of all, to the news we saw overnight. We have not actually seen the letter from Bob Mueller to Attorney General Barr that was sent on March the 27th after Barr's 4-page summary of the Mueller report, but we've seen it characterized in the Washington Post and the New York Times as Mueller being displeased with Barr's presentation on the question of obstruction of justice. What do you read into these reports?
Well, they underscore that there is a very grievous sickness in Washington right now that's causing individuals to forego their constitutional and statutory responsibilities and their obligations to the American people. And it's clear that the source of that infection, that sickness, is Donald Trump, who's infecting not just the people around him in the White House, but also those public officials who are entrusted with leading the institutions of government that are supposed to protect the American people and the rule of law. And so I find it rather appalling in terms of what we have seen now coming out of the Attorney General over the last several months. I was one of those earlier on who thought the Democrats were being too hard on him during his confirmation hearings because of what I had heard about him and his reputation. I thought he was going to protect the rule of law and the institution of the Department of Justice. But these reports, I think, just reinforce the notion that he is acting as Donald Trump's personal lawyer and not the Attorney General of the United States. Now, I'm not surprised at all that craven politicians like Lindsey Graham continue to give Donald Trump a pass. But I am surprised that not more Republicans are coming and speaking out. But fortunately, we have somebody like Bob Mueller who's immune to this sickness. And this country's future basically rests on Bob Mueller's ability to continue to speak truth to power and to maintain his integrity in a sea of this sickness.
How do you explain the behavior, if you can attempt to, even of Attorney General Barr? He's not some Fox News host that Donald Trump plucked. It's not Judge Jeanine Pirro. As you said, he has a reputation in Washington. He's previously been the Attorney General. Why would he run interference in his position for the President of the United States?
I don't know. I don't know what he has to gain other than just trying to continue to reinforce his view that the office of the presidency is almost immune from these types of legal challenges that are being brought forward now. But also someone like Rod Rosenstein, who, at times I've been very pleased that he has been able to support the Mueller investigation, but then that obsequious farewell letter to Donald Trump, where he praised Donald Trump for his inaugural address. That inaugural address, which was one of the darkest and gloomiest of any president's address. And so I see it as a sickness that as they get into this Trumpian vortex, that they have a skewed perspective about right and wrong. And they don't have the moral compass about what is doing right for this country. Their moral compass now is doing what is best for Donald Trump.
You actually said on this show, after we got William Barr's 4-page summary on March 26, you said, I don't know if I received bad information, but I think I suspect there was more than there actually was. Have you changed your view of the Mueller report since that time a month ago?
Well, I think when that 4-page Barr memo came out, we were all in a state of shock in terms of just how it was portrayed. And I think once the Mueller report came out, it was clear that it chronicled all of the collusion that was taking place. But I take Bob Mueller's decision that it did not establish that criminal conspiracy that is necessary to indict somebody. But on the obstruction of justice issue, it's clear in my mind that Bob Mueller was not going to go against prevailing Department of Justice policy about not indicting a sitting president. And that's why the fact that Bob Mueller went and put this language down in a memo, objecting to what the Attorney General did, I think it demonstrates the depth of his anger, and he wanted to memorialize that. And that's why we need to have Bob Mueller in front of Congress answering questions, and he will do it very honestly and very objectively.
And make a lot of United States senators calling for just that overnight, that Bob Mueller must sit before Congress.
Yeah, Director Brennan, how important is it that he put it to paper, that he memorialized it? I mean, there was also a phone call, but which is more important and why?
Well, I think it was clear to Bob Mueller that that 4-page memo that came out really did misrepresent, mischaracterize in a very, very unfortunate manner what the Mueller investigative team did for 2 years. And I think Bob Mueller was expressing the concerns of his team and himself about the importance of not not misleading the American public with this narrative that clearly was designed to give Donald Trump a pass on both the collusion as well as on the obstruction of justice issue. And so I think I agree with Chuck Rosenberg. It was a very, very unusual step for Bob Mueller to put down in writing the depth of his objections to what the Attorney General did. I think Bob Mueller is looking for the opportunity to express what he believes was the real bottom lines of the investigation.
John, the actions, the rhetoric of the sitting Attorney General of the United States seems to be one more swipe at the institutions of this country, weakening them. Last week, there was another continued swipe uttered by the President of the United States, who, whatever he says, is like a megaphone. It resonates throughout the country because of the way it's carried, in which he basically said that people like you and several other people in the intelligence community were responsible for trying to participate in a coup to undermine the presidency of the United States and to remove the President of the United States. What does that do, never mind to you personally, what does that do to institutions like the NSA, the CIA, the FBI?
Well, it just continues to show Mr. Trump's disdain for the intelligence and law enforcement communities who are trying to do their jobs irrespective of political winds that it might be blowing in Washington. And I think it really is demoralizing for Mr. Trump to continue to say that there is this deep state that is tried to launch a coup, and that he is trying to clean the swamp, while in fact it is those professionals within the intelligence community, law enforcement community, who are trying to carry out their duties and responsibilities to the American people. And so Mr. Trump just continues to go down this road, and I think it is having a very damaging impact.
What do you think, Director Brennan, happens from here now? I think that's what a lot of people watching want to know. They go, okay, Bob Mueller did not like the way that his report was characterized by the Attorney General. Fine, on the question of obstruction of justice. Now what? Is it Mueller sitting before the Senate and answering specific questions about what's inside his report? What's the outcome of all this?
Well, Barr has to be interrogated by
that starts this morning at 10 o'clock.
And then Bob Mueller has to get up in front of Congress. And then Congress has to do its job. And I'm still waiting for those Republicans to realize that the Trump ship is a sinking one. And there are still rats on that ship, and there are individuals who are not going to separate themselves from Trump, but they do so at their own peril. And they need to fulfill their obligations, irrespective of their political affiliation. And to do it now, rather than to allow this continued sinking of not just the presidency, but of these institutions of government that we rely on to keep us safe and secure.
Tom Nichols has a question for you on Venezuela, a different topic. Tom?
Director, it seems that the people defending the president somehow think they're saving the country by going into this all-hands mode. And yet here we are in the middle of a crisis with Venezuela, with a direct challenge yet again from the Russian president, who has determined that yet another dictator cannot be overthrown. How dangerous is it to our national security to have the entire executive branch just being sucked into the black hole of constantly defending Donald Trump, while there are all these other things going on in the world, including in Venezuela, where we are getting a very direct challenge from the Kremlin?
Well, even on calm news days, it is apparent that Donald Trump does not read his intelligence briefings, does not take these issues seriously. But when there's such royal political waters involving Mr. Trump, I can just imagine how distracted he is, and whether or not he is going to opt to do something that is going to be reckless and is going to put our national security interests at stake. And so whether you think about Venezuela or Iran or North Korea or others, we need right now a president who is going to be able to lead this country during some very difficult and challenging times internationally. And the more he is consumed and the more he is focused and the more our political environment in Washington is focused on these political issues, we're not going to be able to step up to that leadership role that we need to play today.
All right, former CIA Director John Brennan, thanks as always. Good to see you.
Thanks, Will.
Still ahead on Morning Joe, we'll speak live next hour with the Washington Post reporter who helped to break the story of Bob Mueller's concerns with William Barr's conduct. Plus, we'll check in with our Justice and White House correspondents for the latest reaction to all of this. NBC's Peter Alexander and Pete Williams join the conversation just ahead.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.